that you all made time to be here with us. Thank you. And also, I'm very grateful for a wonderful panel that we have here today with us. And I'm super excited to hear their perspectives to celebrate the International Women's Day. So in terms of the theme for this event, it's really about breaking barriers beyond the glass ceiling and celebrating the women in our lives and the impact in our lives. And before we get started with the panel discussion here, I want to share a couple of quotes with you that connect to our theme today. Women are the real architects of society. So this is a quote by Harriet Beecher Stowe. And then the second quote I have is by Kofi Annan, who's a Nobel Prize winner and former Secretary General of UN. There is no tool for development more effective than the empowerment of women. So again, I thought these are very relevant for the theme that we have today. And as I said before, I'm really grateful for our panel members who've made some time to be with us today, clearing their busy schedules. And we have very inspiring women leaders here with us, and they come from very diverse backgrounds. And they will be sharing their personal journey, the challenges that they've faced in their lives and how they've overcome those. And also, we'll, together with the panel here today, we'll explore themes of leadership, empowerment, as well as building resilience, and also creating inclusive opportunities for young women and women, who shape our society and drive so much impact in all our lives. And on a personal note, before I invite the panel members here, I want to share that one of the women that has deeply, deeply inspired me and still does today is my grandmother. She is an epitome of deep compassion, love, and service to the community. And she's done that throughout her life. And so whenever I run into any challenges in my life, I remember her. She's passed away many years ago, but she continues to inspire me, my family members, and anyone who has had the good fortune of interacting with us, with her. So just remembering her today on this special day, and of course my mother, who is also here, who is one of the strongest women that I know in my life. And so all of us have been daughters, and no, all of us, most of us. Definitely daughters, but the women, also mothers. Some of us are mothers as well, and professional. We're all many of us are professionals. There is a lot of impact that we drive on a day-to-day basis in our lives, and we can't do we all need to support each other and celebrate each other. That's the focus for today, today's event. But we also need men and their support, because they have daughters and mothers, co-workers who are women, and we need their help to come together and advance women in our society. So I'm glad to see some of you here, and I'd love to see more and more men supporting women as we celebrate them. All right, with that said, let's move on to our panel discussion here. I'd love to start with Glynis Mason, who's here with us today. She's principal of Ardenwood Elementary School in Fremont. And this school has over 640 students, and it's set very high standards of excellence. And Glynis has been in the field of education for about 16 years now. She's spent 10 years of that as a special education teacher, and 3 years as a program specialist, and the last 4 years as a school administrator. But what's really interesting, I thought, is that education is a second career for Glynis. She previously spent about 15 years in the financial services industry, with a global banking institution as an investment banker. So I was really curious when I learned about her background, and we'll learn more about what led her to make the switch. She also serves as a board chair of Children Rising. It's a non-profit organization in Oakland, and it provides academic tutoring to at promise elementary school students. So I'm eager to learn more, and please join me in welcoming Glynis to the stage. Yeah, please. Thank you for being with us today, Glynis. All right, second panelist is Smriti Rekha, who's here with us, and she's also a dear friend of mine and diplomat in American Board of Internal Medicine. She is a practicing internal medicine physician with the John Muir Medical Group, and she has over 25 years of experience, and she's also built a thriving private practice for about 11 years before it was acquired by John Muir Medical Group. Since then, she's been serving in that role, serving the community. But she's also held multiple administrative positions as CEO of her own medical practice, private practice, and assistant chair of Department of Internal Medicine, San Ramon Regional Medical Center, as well as medical director of Department of Internal Medicine, John Muir Medical Group. And on the personal front, she's a special needs parent who has learned to balance work life and caregiving on an ongoing basis. She's also always been involved with volunteering in the special needs classrooms, or community in general, and she's also a practitioner of heartfulness meditation for several years. So please join me in welcoming Smriti to the stage. Our third panelist here is Janine Rashidi. I hope I'm saying your name right, Janine. Janine is a trailblazer in trauma healing, overcoming personal adversities. She's walked the fire of physical, psychological, and emotional abuse and teenage motherhood. And today she's also a doctor of Ayurveda, an international keynote motivational speaker, and she's the creator of EDHIR process, which is a revolutionary technique for mentally and emotionally digesting traumatic experiences. And she's also the #1 best-selling author of the book, Abundance Beyond Trauma. The book, you can take a look at the book outside at the Heartfulness information booth after we are done here. And she's also a PTSD and trauma specialist, breathwork facilitator, and founder of her own practice called Goodbye Tension. I love the title, by the way, of your practice. So please join me in welcoming Janine to the stage. Finally, not but the least, we have Meera here, who is the Chief Information Officer at Palo Alto Networks. And as a CIO, Meera is responsible for Palo Alto Networks' global information technology functions. And she has been driving strategies to scale and rapidly deliver innovative solutions for their worldwide teams. Prior to joining Palo Alto Networks in 2022, Meera was the CIO at Citrix and held past leadership roles at McAfee, ForcePoint, Cisco, and Infosys. And Meera had her beginnings in a small town in Tamil Nadu, India. And it's been an incredible journey for her. And she likes to keep herself in good spirits and by keeping her body and mind healthy. And that's one of the reasons she's been practicing heartfulness meditation for over a decade. And she also enjoys being in nature. She does running and hiking as well. So join me in welcoming Meera. Well, thank you all for being here. I am so honored that you made time for us today. All right, so one of the first things I wanted to start with, and hopefully you all can still hear me. I'd like to to start off with your personal and professional journey here. So I'm going to start with Glynis, you, if you don't mind. Glynis, you had a pretty significant pivot in your career. I was so curious to, and I am, and I think the audience would be too, curious to hear what led to your decision to switch from financial services, investment banking, to being an educator and an administrator. And also feel free to share other aspects of your personal and professional journey and what brings you joy and inspiration.
Thank you so much. How are you?
Can you hear Glynis?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, great.
So I'll just start by saying clearly it was not the money. One does not leave investment banking, financial services, and go into teaching to get rich. My previous role in the private sector filled my pockets, but did not fill my heart and did not give me joy. So actually, it wasn't really necessarily my choice. But after I spent 15 years in investment banking, financial services, I had twin daughters, and they were home with a nanny. And I had the opportunity to stay home with my daughters. And so for me, that was the most important thing. I wanted to have that time with them because you can never get that back. But then once they went to school, I was still home. So now what was going to be next for me? I didn't really know. But my husband, who's here supporting me today, was working. And so I started volunteering in the classroom, working with at-promise students who were trying to master reading. And I saw how teachers spent so much time and effort with 28 or 30 kids in the class and really trying to meet the needs of so many diverse learners. But I felt it was my responsibility because my students were at that school and I wanted to support and contribute. So I looked around and I said, there are quite a few people who look like me and have time. And I said, let's get together and establish a reading program. So that was the first program I developed. It was just a set of volunteers, parents, who got together and said, we can spend a little bit of time each week working with students that are at promise. That's what we call the students at promise. So we worked with the principal, we worked with the teachers, we got curriculum, we were led by those professionals who'd been in the industry for a long time, and we were able to make a difference. But after that, I said, I need to do more. So I went back to school after having a bachelor's in finance and got a credential in special education. And during that program, I learned that was my passion. I wanted to help those students that were at risk, those students that needed more support in order to access their curriculum, access their education. That was important to me, and that drove me for years. It drove me to where I am today, where I can help students from a variety of learning profiles. So what gives me joy really is not making money, obviously, but making changes and making a difference in students' lives. I've worked with students from preschool all the way to post-secondary, and there's joy on every level. Special education is where my heart is. Before I retire, I hope to return to that. I'm in general education now at Ardenwood, which is a fabulous school of dragons. So that's kind of my journey. It seems a little odd, a little different, but I went from making money to making a difference.
Wow.
That's deeply inspiring, Glynis. Thank you for sharing that with us. And clearly your passion drives you, and we're all lucky that you've chosen to do what you do and driving that impact. And I'm sure so many young women that you work with also feel that. So thank you for sharing that. I'd like to, Smriti, maybe I'll switch over to you here. You've had, I'd like to call you an entrepreneur too, because you've started your own private practice and all of that. And I know you've had, just personally, because I know you've had your own share of challenges and ups and downs in your career and personal life. So please share with us your personal and professional journey, and also what led you to start your own practice, because it's a pretty big responsibility, and how that came about.
So, when I was in residency back in the 1990s,
Can you all hear?
can you hear me?
You probably need to put it close.
Okay. In the 1990s, when I was in my first year of residency, I was diagnosed with a life-altering condition. And it took grit to survive the 3 years of sleepless
No,
nights.
you can't hear me very well? Okay.
You need to keep it close.
Is it turned on? Oh, yeah. You might have to.
Can you hear me? Okay. All right. So it took a lot of grit to survive those 3 years of sleepless nights and find myself in a position where I was ready to start a career. It was multiple relocations of the family before I finally landed in the Bay Area. I was initially in a group practice setting where my position was financed by a relocation agreement from the local hospital because of a need for physicians in the community. What I didn't know in the naivete of the time was that this was a business proposition for my ex-boss, who basically saw this as an opportunity to fund his practice while I took home a salary. And that
So
worked.
1 second, Smith. I just want to make sure
Sure.
we hear you better. Thanks, Kian.
That process was about 2 years, and somewhere during that time frame, my second son was diagnosed with autism. It was a very hard, it was a breaking time, but I had to find the grit within again to keep surviving. And I had a contract for 3 years with the local hospital. If I didn't serve the community and stepped away, I would have to pay back $300,000, which I didn't have. And so at the time, I had some other job offers. My ex-boss decided that since I was the mother of an autistic child, I should be let go so that I could focus on my child. Needless to say, he'd made his money from the contract at that point. So I had to find, within 60 days, a career change plan. And while still seeing patients and honoring my contract with him, during those 60 days and doing rounds in the hospital, I had to come up with a business plan, find a bank that would give a minority woman a loan, find an office space, and get my doors open. I had other easier options of finding another employment, but I didn't want to find myself in the same position again. And given the path I was going to be going through with an autistic child, it wasn't clear how much time I would have to dedicate to the practice versus home. Those were very early times and there wasn't a lot of information. So I needed to be my own boss, and I needed to have control in my life about how much time I was able to dedicate to the practice. And it was a journey for 11 years of learning to first survive, then thrive, and got to the point that my practice was profitable enough and had a good reputation that the corporate John Muir Medical Group wanted to acquire me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And I know, looking back on this, and I can only imagine how hard that must have been, that phase, dealing with those challenges. And kudos to you for your resilience to get through that and turn it into a thriving private practice, and then
Get acquired,
getting acquired.
And I
eventually.
will answer that second part, what gives me joy.
Yeah.
The day-to-day joy is in the small moments. It's in the life saved, a tear wiped, a hug to my patient, and a life made better. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. That's beautiful, Smriti, because we are so grateful for you and for all the medical practitioners out here that have been serving our community. COVID, before that, after that, we know you endured a lot during the last few years. So thank you for doing what you do. Janine, I'd like to move to you. You are clearly a trauma expert and also a healer, and of course an author. So again, I know you've gone through an incredible journey yourself, so I would love to hear more about your personal and professional journey, and also what led you to this choice of this profession as a doctor of Ayurveda, but also the trauma. I know it has deep connections to your childhood and who you are as a person. So would you like to share?
So the first thing I like to say is what brings me joy is showing others how to unfold joy within themselves after trauma and adverse life experiences. Now, if somebody would have told me that I would be up here speaking about such a thing in my, early childhood or as a teenager or young adult, I would have laughed at them. It was never my intention to specialize in this field because I had my own trauma that I was dealing with. So I was born to two methamphetamine addicts, and they still are. And even though I was a straight A student, destined for medical school, school was not teaching me how to deal with what was going on at home. And so I thought to myself, I will leave home at 15 and I will start a new life, which is admirable and very naive. So when I ran away from home, I learned how to live homeless for 18 months. And during that time is when I met my first husband, whom I have 2 daughters with. And while my intention was to begin a different life, what ended up happening was I attracted the same type of person into my life that was familiar. So what would happen is I now have 2 children, and the same atrocities that I experienced are very similar to what my daughters experienced. And so it led me to ask the question, how does this happen? Because I left home thinking I will not be a part of this, I want my life to be something different, and instead I went even deeper into the cycle of trauma and abuse. And now I have 2 children, which, by the way, I never wanted to be a mother. And I think it's important to acknowledge when we want to do these things and when we don't want to do these things. Otherwise, it creates a split in our psyche. But here I was, now I have 2 daughters, and now they have very similar issues as what I have, and I have yet to deal with my own issues. And so that's what led me on this journey of healing my own trauma, is realizing my daughters have now experienced this, and I don't want my grandchildren to experience this, whom I have 5 of now. And so that led me to, obviously, the inner journey of looking at how did I even attract a partner like this whom I was trying to get away from. And I talk about that in my book, and I won't go into detail about that right now. But what happened was, as I began my healing journey, I got into massage. It was a logical decision. I had never had a massage before. And as I was receiving massage, more memories were coming up. And so I went through my entire education as a massage therapist, really just dealing with my own issues. But I needed to make money, so I opened up a practice called Goodbye Tension. And what naturally started happening were the clients that were coming in just started talking about their trauma, no prompting from me. And I questioned, who am I to help anybody? I can't even help myself. In fact, the same cycle has now repeated with my children. Therefore, I am the last person to be holding space for anyone. However, the divine obviously had other intentions. And as more people were expressing their trauma, I realized I need to educate myself. And so I started learning other modalities that would at least help with holding space for people to just speak about it. Now, during this time, what I didn't realize was that there was a certain method that was developing, a certain way of asking questions, or realizing that people don't want to speak about their trauma because the mind does not understand time, it doesn't understand the concept, so every time we speak about it, we relive it. Well, at this point, I now realize that I myself have post-traumatic stress disorder, and I'm continually getting triggered, so I know what it's like to relive that trauma. And so again, I just kept educating myself, getting certified in other modalities, and then I found Ayurveda. And I found Ayurveda because of my own medical condition, which at the time, Western medicine couldn't figure out. They diagnosed it as a quote-unquote spell. And so through some divine intervention, I found Ayurveda. I really did not know at all what it was, but that's how I began my journey, was it helped me. And I got excited about it, and therefore I shared it with others. I did not have any intention of becoming a doctor of Ayurveda. However, that is the path that was set forth. As far as specializing in trauma, it became clear that because of the experiences that I've had and the ability to work through that and not push it away, which we naturally want to do, on the other side of that is where I found my joy. And that's why I believe that, especially with the things that I've gone through, anything is possible if you will hold space for somebody. Because we all need to feel seen, heard, loved, accepted, and feel safe. If you can create an environment like that, people will naturally open up and they will at least start speaking about it. When you look at somebody, are you truly seeing them? When you're listening, are you really listening? When you ask somebody, how was your day? Do you really want to know how their day is, or are you just asking it? These are the things. And all it takes is one moment where somebody feels seen and heard and loved. That can shift their entire life.
Well said.
Wow, thank you for sharing that, and embracing vulnerability and sharing your personal story with us, Janine. I'm so deeply inspired by this. It's a pretty significant transition, very unconventional transition, to Ayurveda. Some of us who come from India do use that, the alternative medicine form. I'm so glad to hear that you found a lot of healing with that. And also you've gone through a lot, but you're using all of that to serve the community and help others who are going through similar challenges. And that's really inspiring. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Meera, I'd like to move on to you about your, personally I've been very inspired by your, I'll call it like meteoric growth in your professional career. But also I know that personally, as a friend, you've been doing this heartfulness meditation for many years, and I know that brings you a lot of joy and grounding as well. So I'd love to hear your own personal and professional journey, from the small village in Tamil Nadu in India to where you are today, leading such a global, big technology organization. I would love to hear your story, and again, what maybe any defining moments in your journey where you realize you're breaking these barriers and beyond the glass ceiling, and what helped you along the way, and what inspires you and inspires you to push forward.
First of all, Bhagya, I have to say thank you for including me in this. Listening to the stories of this wonderful women, I'm like sitting here, I'm like, why am I sitting here? I think it's probably the imposter syndrome of like, okay, then I'm like, gosh, they are so inspiring, and hearing everybody's story, it's so different. For me, it's, I'm from a small town in a place called Virudhunagar, which is actually southern part of Tamil Nadu. And it's a small, I would say, a very conservative community. All my cousins pretty much got married at the age of 16 to 17. If you're over 17 years old, you're considered too old, you're not married, what happened? Is your daughter okay? So for me, first of all, getting out of my hometown to go and have an engineering education itself is a big deal, because in a community or in a joint family, even though we were not in a joint family, but it's like everything comes together in my grandma's house and my grandpa's house. So for me to take an education, my dad and my mom has to get permission from the entire village, kind of a thing, right? They have to go and make sure my grandparents are okay, my elder brother is okay, my father's mom is okay. So I went and told her. So it was funny story. So when I went and told her I'm going to go for she's my great grandma. She was like, she lived until 104. Such a amazing lady, inspirational lady. When I went and told her like, I'm going to go and do engineering, and she goes like, why do you want to go and build bridges? At least you should do a doctor, then you can do some delivery for the pregnant women. That was her literally. And then she goes like, but you're no use to me. I'm not going to give any more birth to kids. And it was like, that's kind of the response I got. But nevertheless, my parents are so supportive, but they were very critical that I don't travel, even though I had opportunity to go anywhere I want to go and get my education. They were very particular that they can see me which means 1 hour from hometown, whatever it is, that's all I can get to go. So, but I'm also a little rebellious. I didn't listen. I applied to everywhere. So every acceptance comes, my mom hides it from me. So finally I said okay to the college close by home. Once I accepted, then they go, oh, by the way, we got this acceptance too, and by the way, we got this acceptance too, and I was so mad. But I'm so glad, actually, it was the best, because I was just 1 hour away from my home. So weekends, I get all the laundry taken care by somebody, and then home-cooked food, and then weekdays I spend in the dorm and enjoy. That was great. But for me, what triggered was, I think when I was in 10th grade, my next-door neighbor boy showed me a computer, and then he said how cool it is, and he was showing off a little bit, basically. That's what he was doing. And I'm like, and then he was also trying to say it is a smart people thing. And in my mind, I'm a competitive person. I'm like going like, gosh, I need to prove to you I can be smarter than this. That's how it started. But I loved logical thinking and analytical thinking, so I went into computer science and engineering. But of course, I'm 20 years by the time I finished, which means I'm like too old to get married. So the day I finished my education, the next week I was engaged, 3 months later I was married, and then got shipped off right away. I mean, it was literally my parents were waiting for me to say that I'm done with my education and get me married off. And then I got married to really, very fortunate, I would call it divine blessing. He's actually became my best friend, mentor, and my husband. My husband was actually he was literally like coaching me. I was a small town girl, never left, lived in a city. I went to Bangalore straight there. And I was telling, somebody recently asked me, I was telling, oh, when I got married, the evenings we used to compete with each other, who can do most amount of analytical questions in GMAT books and whatnot, because that's a way he could motivate me to, get comfortable, so go for interviews, etc. So I started working in Bangalore when I was there. However, like her, I made the choice when 3 years into my career or 2 years into my career, I decided like when I had my child, I don't want to work. So I quit my job and I took a break, and because I really wanted to spend the time with my daughter. And for me, it was really important that, if you lose that time, you may or may not get the time. So I took a year off, but of course, after a year, it was very agitating because now she's like running around and wanted to be independent, and Shweta, anybody knows that she's a mind of her own, and I need the space. So I said, okay, it's time now. You can go to the daycare. I wanted to go to the job, so I went back to job, and we came here. And one thing led to another. I don't know whether I would call anything as a defining moment from a career point of view. I almost felt like, for us, all of us, every step is the journey in the direction we need to go. Sometimes we feel like we are taking a step which is actually pulling us back. Honestly, I felt even when it feels that way, it's actually a learning moment. You have made progress, right? I mean, I always remembered Edison's word, there are 1,000 ways I found out now how not to do things. That's how I feel. Whenever even something is not right or it feels not right, it still is a step in the forward direction. So to me, it's not a defining moment, but it's every moment continuous learning and, inspiration from others. At the end of the day, the day you stop learning, you're dead, and I truly believe in it. And especially technology industry is, you can never stop learning.
Thank you, Meera. I can relate to that quite a bit. I also come from a small town, small village, and there's just so many parallels to our journey here. But no, we are very happy to have you on this panel, and I know apart from being a leader and CIO at Palo Alto Networks, I know that you've also had a very interesting journey, on the professional and other fronts. We'll get into that shortly, and I'm eager for all of us here to hear your story. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the challenges and difficulties that you all have experienced as women in your respective fields. Especially when you started your career, things were probably different, and I know we've made quite a bit of progress, but we still have a long way to go. So maybe I'll come back to you, Glynis, and as a school principal, I'm guessing you work very closely with a lot of young girls, boys, and all of that, but also those who are, they probably struggle with some challenges, but they have their aspirations and dreams that they want to accomplish. And I'd like to hear two aspects. One, what you've seen them struggle with in terms of challenges and how you help them move past those, but also your own life and your journey. What kind of challenges have you faced, and what's helped you overcome those?
In terms of personally, I come from a long line of women who believe in education. I have, my mom and 4 other aunts who are in their 90s. So we still have that matriarch kind of overarching effect of all of those women, and they are constantly still teaching us every day. Even though I'm 61, my mom is teaching me something every day, and she's 95. So that's where the grounding starts. And she will tell you that she's still teaching me something every day. But the grounding starts there. So I'm from a small town also in Illinois. And we were taught that education is the path to success. I went to the same university that my sister and older brother went to, University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. I was going to follow in their footsteps, and I was going to go into finance, and I was going to be, the head of a bank or something like that. But what I learned is that numbers were not really my forte. So that didn't quite add up, no pun intended. But what I learned in my career in financial services at the very end, in the investment banking piece, was that I was more of a salesperson than a structurer. So I didn't structure deals, but I could sure sell them. And that's because I'm a relationship-based person. And so that's what I learned also as I went into special education and education. It's all about relationships. Students have to trust you in order for you to establish that relationship and then help them move forward. So a little bit about the challenges. In the private sector, not many people looked like me, of course. So we have to work twice as hard and prove ourselves and have mentors and all of those things. And that's across the board for any kind of role that you have or whatever profession you're in. But in terms of working with students now, what I've learned is that whether or not your student has a different learning profile and special needs, or whether your student is neurotypical, it doesn't matter. All students have struggles. We all have, raise your hand if you have struggles. We all have struggles. Doesn't matter. So the reality is that now I've learned from all students that when I listen to them and I understand the challenges that they're facing, and we have a relationship grounded in trust, I can help those students with whatever struggles they have, be it academic, be it behavioral, be it social, emotional, and also working with my team, right? So I can't know everything. My counselors, my teachers, my special education team, they have to partner with me, and they do. Great, I'm grateful for that. So the reality is that all students have struggles, boys, girls, TK, high school, but we ground the relationship in trust, and we understand what those struggles are, and then we bring to bear the services and supports that they need, whoever they are and whatever those are. We are there to serve students. That is what we are there to do. We are not there to control students or dictate. We are there to serve students. I'm also there to serve and support educators. And that's how you get things done. I don't care what your job is. You're a team member, you're serving somebody, you understand them, you have trust, you build a relationship, and then you slip in the truth.
I love that, Glynis, the call out to building trust and and relationships, because that's the foundation, right, for everything else that follows. So thank you for your service. Again, like I said before, I'm so glad you made the transition. Janine, I'd like to come back to you. And I know you were a teenage mom, and I became a mom at 24 years age, and I found it quite challenging. Wasn't quite ready for it. So I'm really curious to hear your challenges, as you navigated that phase in life, and how that's shaped your life after that, and how you approach everything else.
Well, I will tell you that being a teen mom was very, very hard. As I stated earlier, I knew growing up, because I was the eldest of 5, that I actually didn't want children, because my observation of what it meant to be a parent, which of course was, skewed by their addiction, it didn't seem like a very fun job. Come to find out, it's really not. But it has its benefits at some point. I would say the biggest struggle was I was a child raising children. So I was pregnant at 16 with my first one, and then I gave birth to my second one when I was 20, and I would say I was still a child, obviously. And I, obviously was thrown into motherhood very early, but as well as because of the, first relationship that I had, he was also an addict. So now I had to figure out, how do I provide for my children? How do I raise my children? And at this point, I got my GED when I was 20. Even though, I was a straight A student, I dropped out and I ran away from home. So, I was very intelligent, I knew that. I took my test, but I did not have any other education behind me. And at the same time, I'm now faced with, I'm now raising 2 children on my own, and I don't have a college background. So I, chose the profession of massage, which, led me here to where I am today. But I would say the biggest obstacle was, one, being a teen mom and realizing that I don't want to be a mom. But I also, when faced with the decision on whether or not to terminate my pregnancies, I also knew I couldn't do that either. So I was accepting that, okay, this is what life has brought me, and now this is my commitment. And so I did the absolute best I could with the tools that I had, as well as trying to build a practice so that I could provide for them. And through that journey, I would say that probably another major struggle was my mind. As I said, I had PTSD, so there were continuous obstacles, including self-esteem issues, which prevented me from going out there and marketing myself because I didn't feel worthy or good enough to even do that. But what drove me was I needed to provide for my children. So there was a lot of survival instinct in there to keep pushing me along. And then through my journey of healing, that's when I established a much better relationship with myself. And once I did that, then everything shifted and changed.
Thank you for sharing that. And just I can relate to some of the things that you've gone through. I was 24, and that was much older than you were when you were a mom, and I didn't feel quite equipped or prepared for it, so I can only imagine how much harder it was for you. Thank you for sharing that. And Meera, I want to come back to you. This is very personal, and because you're my friend, and I also know that you've experienced some serious personal loss in your life. If you feel comfortable, I'd love for you to share a little bit about how you coped with that and what helped you, in overcoming that or finding some ways to cope on an ongoing basis.
Sure. When I introduced myself, I did share that, I got married at the age of 20, and the biggest person in my life was my husband, who was my friend, mentor, whatever name you can, apart from husband. He held many, great father, and whenever I needed, he was there. And I think in 2011, 2012 time frame, we did actually have some health issues, and we didn't know what it is. We went through all kind of things to figure out, but it's always like, every year, the moment the temperature changes one way or the other, he'll fall sick. And we got to a place at that point in time, I got my first CIO job as well. I mean, he was the best cheerleader forever. I mean, he always used to tell, like, you should go for, don't hold yourself back. And I still remember, I mean, technology is not always a easy field. I have been in many, many organizations, even companies, where I was probably the only women in the, I mean, my running joke always used to be, I get the bathroom for myself while the rest of the company shares their bathroom. But nevertheless, he'll be like, oh, if you have to stay late in the office, and that's okay, I'll take care of Shweta. So I have had, I mean, when I was working in Cisco, there was just, I have a bed under my table. So whenever he's traveling, I'll take my daughter with me. We rolled out the bed and I'll tell her, sleep here until I finish my work. I mean, we got kind of into that mold of supporting each other. And his health, once it got receded a little bit, he said, you know what, we decided he will, take a step back from work and he'll just probably take an early retirement. And he never ever showed his health as a reason for not doing anything. He's a very cheerful person. We travel, whatever, right? So in 2019, he was diagnosed with cancer. And the cancer was actually a very, very rare form of cancer called chondrosarcoma, which is actually on epiglottis. It was on his epiglottis, and it was actually on his cartilage. So there is no treatment like you go for radiation or chemo, nothing, which is in some ways it was a blessing because it's only surgery. So he had 2 surgeries and he was cleared. However, what happened was, once you have cancer, it kind of affects your immune system so fast. And that immune system affecting, actually he was CKD, but stage 2, that's actually people in stage 2 of CKD, lifelong they can carry on with that. And it's like, as you age, every one of us will be in some stage. That's the truth when it comes to kidney function. But because of the cancer, his immune system got so much, receded back, and he had 2 flus, and it just impacted his kidney. He just went from somebody who was in CKD stage 2 to stage 5, and kidney just failed. So we have to move him to dialysis. It's still not end of the world because people live on dialysis for 5-10 years, get transplant and extend life for even further. So, but same time COVID hit. So literally 2 months after was the entire world went into lockdown. In some ways, because of the lockdown, he was so secure, no immune compromises, etc. But what had happened was when we started looking at, okay, maybe now, but he was not able to get the kind of treatment because COVID was taking over the world. People were getting the COVID. I mean, rightfully so, people have to go for treatment of survival. And we couldn't start even the transplant process, well, like 2 years into it. But when we started the process, we found out that he has to take care of some cardiac related stuff. And the procedure went okay, but along the line, he got hit by pneumonia. Again, he's a very immune compromised person. And he went in, we have to take him into, I mean, I don't want to go to the gory details, but long story short, 6 months of fight in ICU, every day in out. I mean, there were days that me and my daughter will be sitting in the ICU, just counting like, what is the news they're going to tell us today? And that was like month 1. Then he came out strong, and he, in fact, he's a fighter, and he literally told like, I'm going to fight it for my family, I'll do it. And when he came out, we said, oh, this is good. So 1 week before, they said, oh, in a week he can go home. Next time, pneumonia again. Back into ICU, back into the whole cycle. 6 months, this went on and on and on. And at one point, all organs gave up, and it's just not even possible to extend life anymore. And for me, the biggest thing was, I mean, it's never easy. Not a day goes by without thinking about him, even today. And he's actually, for my daughter, he's the emotional, like she used to tell, mom is the logical, fun, goof around person, but dad is the mom. She literally uses the word because, she tells that whenever I need, I can call dad. He's always there, but you're busy sometimes, mom. That is true, right? But he has been there. So for us, not a day goes by without thinking about him. But what actually transpired through this experience is for me to learn when to, I don't want to use the word let go, because we all are going to go one day. And when it happens, and you have to be, make peace, and you have to pray for that soul, and you have to pray for their peace as well. And meditation is a big piece of my anchor for that. And it's also, I would say, I go back to the trust and relationship, what you talked about. And I was pleased and touched by how many people, just you don't realize, like the world is filled with, we always hear this news and everything, just, intend you with negativity and telling like how cruel the world is. Honestly, I experienced the opposite. It was like so much of kindness, so much of love. The moment he went into hospice, you wouldn't believe it, how many people just flew in, and I didn't even tell. There were people like, hey, I feel like, is everything, I literally had like 6 calls from different people saying, are you all right, everything all right? We just felt something that I know that you're going through, how's Raj? And I said, we are going into hospice. Why did you not call? I'm like, well, I didn't know. They're like, no, we are coming. I had people just there because here I am in Florida in a small town. All the friends were there, family flew in. I just felt like really blessed and lucky. And I feel that way even today. Yes, I miss him. We miss him a lot. But even today, I have a friend, when I said he's right here, when I said I'm coming, he's like, oh, I'm going to come and cheer you up. So I feel very blessed, always surrounded by kindness and love in this world.
Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that story with us. Meera, some of us here in the room have met and know Raj, and I still remember the joy and his fun spirit when he joined us for the half marathon that we were doing as a group.
He didn't finish half, he did 10K, then he took picture with all the half marathon people. That's Raj always.
Yes, and I know he's been a pillar of support for you, so I can only imagine how traumatic it's been for you to go through that. Yes, thank you for sharing that. Smriti, I want to come back to you. You are a special needs parent. I can't even begin to imagine how that must be like, raising a child with special needs and juggling that with your professional responsibilities, with your own private practice and so on. Can you share how this journey has been, and what kind of challenges you've run into, and what helped you overcome those challenges?
That would take a whole day, I think, but I'll try to keep it brief here, because after having heard everybody else over here, I feel like my life was easier. That having been said, there were multiple challenges, the biggest being at the time growing up was time management. And I basically spun for 15 years from probably 6 a.m. to about 1 o'clock in the morning, between rounding into a couple of hospitals, trying to keep the practice afloat, trying to keep up with therapy for my kid, finding resources in a world when internet wasn't as robust as it is today. I would have to drive to the library to find information sometimes, do my own research. Doctors miserably failed at diagnosing the other paraphernalia that came with it, and I had to do my own research and help him out. But time management was the key, and I think I was just blessed with immense energy in my younger years. I never slept. I was a machine that kept going all day, and I did whatever the need of the hour was. What I found was helpful was being transparent and open. With my patients, I had a very friendly family type of relationship. They all knew I had a special needs kid, but they also knew that I was there for them. Some of them had my cell phone number, and they also knew that my backline just rolled into my cell phone number. So nobody actually bothered me during the evenings unless they were critically sick. And they also knew that if they left a message, they were taken care of. There was that feeling of trust on which the practice thrived. And I have to say I was supported by a tribe. A woman doesn't get through her life without a tribe. And that's at work. Thank you. That's at work. It was my staff, who were my champions. It was my sister, who is also a special needs parent. And, I'm sorry, give me a second. It was family. My husband was there for me a lot in those days. And he kept saying, do whatever you need to do. But also my rock was my older son, who was young. But he said, Mommy, you're the best mommy. You can do whatever you need to do. You're always there for us. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But always keep in mind you're helping people, and that's what you were born to do. So, with my tribe, with my faith, and that was an exploration before I landed on Heartfulness. I tried a few other different forms of meditation. I attended a medical lecture which talked about meditation and the neurobenefits of it, functional MRIs that showed how the limbic system was altered and emotional regulation, which I'm clearly failing at right now, but emotional regulation, and how it helped. And one of the things I needed to do in the day was to really keep my lid on at times, whether it was handling a child who was having a tantrum, or whether it was having a tantruming patient in the office because their medication didn't get filled on time or the insurance declined something. And it took a lot of deep breaths, and meditation was my grounding strength to be able to survive the day. And I have to say I've had my tribe in many forms, some of them who are long-term practitioners of meditation with this institution. I don't know if they're there today, but Sandhya Shenoy, Mamta Puri, Neelam Guliani, there's some of these preceptors in the system have been constant supports in my life. And I couldn't have made it to where I am without that support.
I'm at a loss for words. I could feel.
I cry easy.
No.
That's why we are human.
Yes, it is. And thank you for sharing that story, because clearly even sleep was a luxury for a long time. Getting enough sleep at some point. So I can only imagine how hard it was, and I'm so glad to hear that Heartfulness meditation was very helpful.
I'll add one more point. It is said that 1 hour of deep meditation is the equivalent of 6 hours of sleep. And I think that was my energy capsule.
I think those of us here who've been doing meditation can attest to that. I also agree that the preceptors, we call them preceptors, but they're really Heartfulness trainers. They are awesome, and everyone who's been doing this meditation know how selflessly they've been serving the community, and how much we all have benefited from their service. So thank you for calling that out as well, Smriti. So thank you. I think all of us, we've gone through your personal journey, professional journey, as well as some of the challenges that you've faced. I'd love to move on now to, looking at the time here, we have a few more minutes to cover a couple of questions. I'd love to move on to some sustainable solutions for young women, but also women in general, as they move forward in their personal as well as professional journey. So we'd love to hear your insights and any advice for them. Jenny, I wanted to start with you. I'll say, some conservative cultures, and I like, in my personal opinion, mine too, have a taboo with openly discussing any mental health challenges or issues like PTSD, depression, anxiety disorders, and so many more, right? Leave alone finding solutions. We don't even like to talk about it openly. There is also a sense of shame associated with that. It is changing now, but I think there's still a long way to go. And that's why I feel so inspired by someone like you, who is embracing your vulnerability and talking about this openly, And also not only that, but you're helping us find some solutions. You're actually being part of the solution as well. So I'd love to hear your perspectives based on what you've learned and how we can empower young women, but also women, across all walks of life.
I believe it starts with what we believe is okay. For example, when we get emotional, what's the first thing we do? We apologize. Why are we apologizing? If somebody is crying, in Ayurveda we have natural urges. If you withhold those natural urges, you're going to create disease within your body. Crying is one of them. Don't apologize. But we need to be courageous enough to have these conversations. So before my grandmother passed, she started sharing a lot of the abuse that she had as a child, as well as within her marriage. And I happen to know that my mother was also a victim of sexual abuse, but her mother and father didn't want to see it. They didn't want to hear it. So I am not surprised that she chose drugs. I completely understand. Because if there's nobody there to support you, what are your options? You want to escape. Some people do that by running away, some people do that by, using drugs, etc. So until we're courageous enough to sit and have these conversations, the reality is we've all had some sort of adverse life experience that is still stuck with us, whether we want to call it trauma or not. And as far as the next generation or the current generations or the older generations, we need to create safe spaces where it's okay to have these conversations. It's normal to feel down at times. It's normal to feel anxious at times. It's not normal to have PTSD. However, if that's where you're at, that's where you're at, and you can only heal by acknowledging where you're at. So we need to stop looking at how our, ancestors did things in some ways, and in some ways we need to learn from that. But as far as the conversations, especially with, whether it's the culture or I believe the same was happening in my culture as well, out of embarrassment, right? Nobody wants to admit that their child has been molested, let alone that maybe it was a family member that they knew. Because then what does that do to the family reputation? Well, until we call it out, it's going to continue. So we need to be brave enough, because even the perpetrator obviously is having issues. Otherwise, they wouldn't be committing such acts. So whether you're the victim or the perpetrator, either way, we need to be having these conversations and creating safe spaces, for our future generations and the current generations. I know when I was in school, the biggest, aspirations that people that I looked up to were my teachers. And to this day, my teachers. Because they stepped in as the parents. So Glynis, thank you for everything that you're doing. Smriti, thank you for everything that you're doing. And Meera, thank you for everything that you're doing. We need to be courageous enough to just hold space for each other to have these conversations without judgment. Otherwise, how is anything going to change?
Thank you, Janine, for that. That is such an important call out to the need to create safe spaces and have these conversations. That's where it starts, right? So thank you for that. And Meera, I want to come back to you. You have a very unique perspective. You've been a leader in the corporate space, and I'm sure you worked with a lot of women, young and adult women, in different phases of their career, early career, but also people who've been further along. So I'd love to hear from you in terms of the solutions, any sustainable solutions, and what advice do you have for women who are pursuing their career aspirations and dreams?
I think, I see it, and because I have done it as well. Even today I said, hey, we all carry a little bit of self-doubt and an imposter syndrome. And I don't know why, but it is probably, we call it cultural, but it's not cultural. It's across the cultures, I see that, right? Because many times when women are invited to the table, they don't actually say that they feel lucky. They don't feel like, hey, I deserved it, so I need to be at the table, versus, oh, I got lucky to some extent. Or, oh my God, thank God, I have been invited. I'm not saying you need to be arrogant. That's not at all. Humbleness is super important. Being grounded is super important. But also, know that you're there for a reason. Nobody gives you a seat at the table if they don't know that you deserve it. It's not you got lucky, or it is not because you're being picked by. And anytime anybody says, oh, we encourage diversity, so we are hiring for diversity, I just cringe that, because even, I don't know, like politics, but you can't call DEI as the reason for something failing or whatever, right? Because nobody gets a job because you're a certain way. It is because you bring what is required for the job. So please make sure that you are absolutely there because you're deserving. Number two, I go back to Janine. I mean, personally, I still think, like, even when I was over 50-year-old, we all worry about facing our fears, right? I mean, I take risk all the time, and anytime people ask what you could have done to your younger self, if you have to give an advice, what you would like to give an advice, I always say that I wish I would have taken more risk. We all talk about taking risk, but we don't talk about facing our fears that are our demons, right? So to me, unless you face your demons, it's very hard to take risk. You will never take certain risk unless you capture your demons. So know your demons and face your demons. It doesn't mean you have to face it all in one time. It doesn't need to be in your career. It could be very personal to you. It could be in a relationship. It could be, in a broader society. It could be even simple things like I'm still scared of cats. I don't know why, but I'm still scared of. So I was scared of dogs. My daughter brought a dog home. I got over the fear. Now the dog is like my best buddy. And she brought a cat now. She said, Mom, I am helping you. So I think I'll get over that too. But it could be any fear, acknowledging, to your point, and then facing, capturing a demon, because you can't take more risk, you can't do more when something is holding you back. Because it's like somebody has tied you to the chain and telling run fast, run fast. You can't run fast, you're tied to the chain, right? So to me, it doesn't matter, young, old, whatever it is, know that what you are, who you are, what you deserve, take risk, face your demons.
Oh, I love that, Meera, and I can attest to that. The fear of failure has held me back many times in my life.
Exactly.
And, I think that leads to being risk averse, right? And then without taking those risks, in fact, I always like to think that failure is a learning opportunity. And it's
Absolutely.
a step on the way to success, right? But I just wish my younger self had known that and done that. So thank you.
I always ask the question whenever I'm in doubt, what's the worst that can happen? Once I can tell that, then I'll say, can you live with that? Right? There's not one time, Bhagya, I can tell, until today, not one time I've said, well, I can't live with that. It's always the answer is, once you get in your head, what's the worst thing happen? Then the next question, can you live with that? It's always a yes. But when you don't get your head around clearly thinking about what is the worst, you're kind of going to keep ignoring it.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to be reflecting on some of these insights. So really wonderful insights. Thank you. Smriti, I want to ask you this question. You are in the medical field, and I'm guessing that you see a lot of medical students, young women who are, in their early stages of the career, but also further along, right? And I know there are some very unique challenges that medical students and also medical doctors face, some very long hours, and sometimes they seem inhuman hours, and what's expected of them. So please tell us a little bit about some of the struggles they have, but also what kind of solutions you see, based on your experience and wisdom that you have.
Thank you for that question, but times have changed. When I trained in residency, it was 36-hour shifts every fourth night. There were medical errors made and lawsuits that took place. And there was a case in New York called the Libby Zion case, which led to reduction in resident hours to 24 hours. Even that sounds inhuman, but it has not all states have adopted it, but many have. In terms of just being especially being a woman in medicine, and I will focus on that part. There is discrimination and gender disparity at every level, whether it's in medical school. You do face harassment. You do face harassment as a minority woman in medicine, an immigrant. I remember a nurse paging me 100 times one night and hanging up just for the sole reason that I had declined a sleeping pill to a patient. And she was trying to teach me a lesson of what sleep deprivation meant. It wasn't her role to do that. So there is a lot that goes on in a given day in the world of medicine, and your patients bring challenges. For the young women, all I can say, go into the field if you have the heart, the soul, and the energy to deal with it, number one. Number two, you have to be your authentic self. Do something because you want to do it, not because your parents are expecting you to, which is a big thing, you know, and especially coming from an Indian family where in my generation it was, if you're a professional, do you want to be an engineer or do you want to be a doctor? Fortunately, there's other fields today, but you have to be your authentic self, and you bring a lot to the table when you go with your heart and soul. And the imposter syndrome part of it, you stole that piece from me, I'm sorry, but I was going to be part of the dialogue today, but even today as I sit here, I think, do I deserve to be here? And for the young women, I just tell you, like L'Oreal says, you're all worth it. Just be yourself, and you have the grit, the power, and you can move the world. Nonconformists sometimes move the world. You don't have to conform to everything that is expected of you. Be yourself, and you will thrive.
I think many of us face it. So thank you for reminding us, sometimes on a daily basis, right? And it's something we have to consciously work on. Glynis, is there anything else you wanted to add from your perspective in the field of education in terms of what's helped the students, especially female students, you know, as they pursue their dreams and aspirations? You know, what kind of strategies or solutions or tools, you know, do you see them leveraging as we move forward? Let's try.
So when I first became a school administrator, I was in the high school. And
It's not on.
It's not?
now?
Yes.
Sorry. My first year, I was an assistant principal at a middle school and high school. I don't know if you're familiar with Horner and Irvington Middle School and High School. And they are not the mission attendance area. I'm just speaking. I know people probably know. But, you know, they are probably very close to the mission attendance area, meaning that there is a keen focus on students excelling to the point of where we really started to see what we call perfectionism in some students, to the point that they felt like if they couldn't get straight A's, then they couldn't do anything. And so I guess my message is about that, because I am a student, I was a student who got really great grades all the way through. And then when I went to college, I went from a 300-person high school to a 30,000 student university. And I did not transition well. And only by the time I got to the end of my investment banking career did I understand what I was really good at. And I was 30-something years old. But I tried to fit into a mold that my brother and my sister had sort of developed. And I thought, I'll drop right into that. But it wasn't for me. And being an engineer, or being a software developer, or being a doctor, or being a lawyer may not be for you. It might be for you. It might be for you. But it might not be. And when I was a principal at high school, I talked to families, and I got a lot of pushback and a lot of complaints when I said, if your student doesn't get into one of the UCs, it's not the end of the world. But then they stormed out, and I tried to catch them, but I couldn't. And And I said, also, I think your student wants to major in English and be a professor. And then they wanted me fired. I'm going to tell you straight. But what's so funny
Did you tell
about
that
it
to the Indian
is-
parent? That was
what's that?
Did you tell that to an Indian parent? They definitely don't want to hear that.
If you know Fremont School District, you know. But what's interesting is it took me a long time to learn that. But I didn't really learn when I became a salesperson because then my daughters went to private high school. And I said, oh, I'm about to get a doctor. I'm about to get a lawyer. I'm telling you, I'm totally serious. They both went to the same college. And when they one that was saying she was going to study medicine, got on the plane studying medicine. She hadn't even become a freshman. She got off the plane and told me she was majoring in Japanese and cultural studies. And I said, if you think you're going to an Ivy League school and I'm paying for that, for you to get that kind of degree, you are wrong. You are absolutely wrong. Same thing. I'm going to major in economics. Got off majoring in French and African American studies. They're twins. And I said to my husband, I said, what have we done wrong? What have we done wrong? So I relate to many parents in this community. But only after my daughters graduated, and then I had an opportunity to bring forward that my daughters followed their passions. And now they are in their careers, on their own, doing their thing, treating us to anything that we want, because we let them follow their passions. But it was a scary, scary thing. I have a student who's in 5th grade, does every single thing at the school. I have never seen it. I'm like, does this kid sleep? She is president of this, and on the book club, and on the green team, and in math Olympiad. You know what I'm talking about. In science Olympiad, in math kangaroo, in math bowl. Stuff I didn't even know existed. I was like, where is this coming from? And so the other day, I saw her in the library, and she said, in front of a bunch of other students, I said, are you still doing the book club? And she goes, I quit the book club. And we high-fived, because I said, you don't need the book club. You are doing everything else, and you are passionate about the things that you're doing. And she wants to be a theater major, I think. I didn't tell her parents. But anyway, I'm just saying, you have to be passionate about whatever it is. And if you're passionate, success will follow. Maybe it's money, maybe it's not. Maybe it's accolades of family and friends, maybe it's not. But I think then you can sleep at night. And that's what I tell kids from TK all the way through high school. Follow your passion. You will have to navigate and negotiate with your family, as my kids did with me. And it took me 2 times, my own turn and their turn, and some of your kids' turns, to learn that it's about passion. And you want them to follow that. And you have raised them right, you have grounded them, and they are going to be successful whatever path it is. But we have to let them fly and try and be there to catch them.
Well said, well said.
Well, so I guess what I'm hearing is, Glenn, is drop perfectionism and pursue your passion, right? Yeah, thank you. That's easy to remember and carry forward. We are coming up on time, so what I'd like to do is, if you're all okay with it, maybe just wrap up with the question with quick responses from our panelists. Are you all good with that? 5 more minutes? Okay. All right. Because this is something I really wanted to touch on today. We've talked a lot about women in different aspects of life, professional fronts and personal fronts and all of that. But there is a very important aspect we want to touch on, and that is the women who are contributing in a different way. Women who are homemakers, or they may be caretakers, they are mothers and caregivers, community leaders. They may not be in the professional front, making a lot of income or anything like that, but they're shaping the society in their own way and driving a lot of impact. So because this is the International Women's Day, I wanted to make sure that we also reflect on their contributions and we celebrate them and share our gratitude for them as well. So what can we do? And a lot of times their contributions get completely ignored, right? And it's not valued. So what can we do? I'd love to hear from our panelists. What can we do to do better in this area? How do we how do we make them feel more valued, and how do we recognize their contributions better? So I'm going to start with you, Meera, and then we'll go through.
Yeah, I will tell you, Bhagya, it's a hard, my job is easy compared to be a homemaker's job. Because you get out of the house, you have 8 hours, 10 hours, you're in a place where you have control of many things you can control. Whereas a homemaker doesn't have many of the controls. In fact, many controls are on them, and they're actually working through the controls, right? So to me, recognition, I think it also is a little bit cultural, I would say. I'm not saying that some cultures do well versus other cultures. Because when you started this whole thing, you said the women are architect of the society.
Yeah.
It was a saying, you started with a quote. To me, the architect is coming mostly from the community of women. You talked about the group of women, you talked about people who are homemakers, community leaders, and caregivers. They are the one who are architecting, because the people who are working as that, they're working more with the heart, less with the mind. When you think about shaping a society, shaping a home, shaping a community, heart plays a bigger role than mind. To me, we have to recognize, thank them, and just recognition. First of all, this is the thing, sometimes even telling them thank you, they may feel offended because they feel it is their responsibility. A lot of us don't even recognize that. Just be humble and recognize and say thank you if you can.
Thank you. Thank you. Sure. Janine?
I would say supporting the mom who has chosen to be a homemaker. But then what about the mom who's a homemaker who didn't want to be a homemaker? Right? She's also going to need support. So I have 2 daughters. My youngest one, she loves being a homemaker and a stay-at-home mom. I love seeing that in her. However, her husband did not want children. She has 3 of them. This has been a very interesting journey to watch. And throughout his journey, as she has needed a break, and he has not understood. He comes home and he thinks that's his break. No, that should be her break, right? So how do we start educating not only our partners, but create community support for moms who want to be in that role, moms who don't want to be in that role? One of the most beautiful things that happened this year was he was courageous enough to actually watch all 3 children so that she could fly here, and her and I could have time for her birthday. And what did that do? Gave him a whole different perspective. She came home and he was a changed man. Oh, honey, thank you for all that you've done. He had the dishes done, the room clean. Even I was surprised. And I said, Mohammed, good job. Not many men would want to take that on, right? But he was courageous enough. So we need to have communities that support not only the mom who wants to be there, but also the mom who doesn't want to be there. And how can we first give them acknowledgement for everything that they're doing and give them support and a break? Because let's face it, being a homemaker, you don't get a break.
Yes.
That's probably the most challenging thing, and no recognition. As a society, we need to acknowledge that is one of the hardest jobs. I did both, and I can tell you, I don't think I was a very good mom. I'm a much better grandmother than I was a mother. But I was also in survival mode. And while that sounds like an excuse, it didn't change the impressions that my daughters have to work through as a result of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Janine. Smriti, would you like to?
Yeah, all I can say is from my own personal journey that I was a better mother because I was a doctor, but I was also a better doctor because I was a mother. It taught me patience in both realms. And I learned a lot from my mother, who was the first woman graduate of her village, and my grandmother, who was an amazing woman, but never had an education and wanted to. So we have to, the traumas that we pass on to our children and the future generations, that generational trauma is true. Recognizing that people have trauma, recognizing that people have strengths, and acknowledging that is probably the most important thing we can do to uplift our sisterhood. We really need to pat each other on the shoulder and say, good job done. And that comes naturally to some, but not so for others. And hopefully forums like this teach other women to support each other, whether it's at the workplace or at home.
Absolutely. There's so much more we need to do in this area, right? And I also sometimes I have friends who've chosen to be homemakers for a while. Unfortunately, there's also a sense of shame sometimes that they feel like they're not worthy enough. But we know how they're shaping the young generation, and they are actually they're building the next generation, right, and driving so much impact. If anything, they need to be so proud of the work that they're doing. So thank you for calling that out. Glynis, we'll close out with you this panel discussion. Let's try.
No?
Yes.
So I think the thing for me, the takeaway for me is that we are not one-dimensional. Most of the people in this room are doing many things. We are making homes, we are making money, we are raising kids, we are doing the best we can. I think to understand, if we use the term homemaker, what does that really mean? So let's think about it. We are raising kids, we are figuring out life insurance, house insurance, car insurance. We are planning every single summer camp, we are planning every single vacation. We are doing all those things. We as women are not one-dimensional, we are multidimensional, and we are doing it all. And we continue to do it all, and we did from the start. So that is what the real story is in my mind, is that we are all one-dimensional, whether we're working from home and doing all those things, or whether we're working from our office, or from school, or from here, or wherever we are multidimensional, and we are taking it all on. But we must let ourselves know that we are sacred and we are important. And in order to continue doing all that work, we have to sometimes step away and take space for ourselves. We heard it earlier about taking space. We cannot continue to do all those things every day on a cycle. Although we do. We know we do. But we really, to be healthy in our mind and our body and our spirit, we have to take time away. So today, starting out with the meditation was something that was so impactful for me in terms of bringing forth my best for you all today. But we have to remember we are so multidimensional. And with that comes responsibility for us to think of ourselves first so that we can continue to do all that work.
I love that, Glynis. Well, thank you all for being here today with us. I've learned so much through this conversation, great insights, so much to reflect and ponder upon, so a lot of takeaways for us. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. And I want to close this out with a quote from Serena Williams. Many of you know her, right? Because it seems very apt for today's theme. Every woman's success should be an inspiration to another. I repeat that. Every woman's success should be an inspiration to another. We are strongest when we cheer each other on. This resonated with me so deeply, and because today we are here to celebrate women and their contributions in our lives and to society at large. It is so important that we come together and cheer each other, as we go through this journey. I'll also want to call out what I said earlier in the conversation about the role of men in supporting us along the way. So special thank you to the men who are in this room here, cheering us on. And we need your help, we need your support in this journey, and that's what is going to propel us forward. So I'm really grateful for all of you for being with us today and listening. And before I forget, after this wraps up here, some of our panelists will have graciously agreed to spend a few minutes with us there in the dining area, where grab a cup of tea and feel free to interact with them, ask any questions that you have. You've heard a lot from them today, and there might be some areas that you want to dig into further or learn more about. So feel free to do that. And now I'd like to hand this back to Shakuntala, for the next part of the program. Please stay on for a couple of minutes here. with us.
What a wonderful and inspiring and just emotional panel we've had today. I'd now like to take a minute to felicitate the guests and thank them for their time here today. Thank you to our speakers once again for being here today. If we can give them all another large round of applause.